All right, we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And in case you haven't been here, thanks for joining us. My name's Tanner, and my wife's name is Amy. Amy and I are full time artists and crafters. We work in a wide variety of mediums, mainly in metal and leather. And Amy also does very beautiful watercolor paintings on which we base most of our other subjects and images. So we do this full time and we often take trips out of town to go to other shows. And we recently took one, which sort of inspired this particular video. So we are going to talk about travel tips for artisans or crafters, artists, etc. in this video, just because we thought, you know what, there's some universal tips no matter where you are or where you're going that we think would be beneficial to maybe add to a checklist for yourself, or at least to have in mind when you're preparing and traveling to and from these shows. I think without further ado, let's just jump right in on that. So, the first one is planning your trip. So, of course, when you're looking at an out of town show, there's always extra costs that you don't have when you're doing an at home show kind of thing. And so, you want to make sure that you're researching the craft show very as thoroughly as you can to make sure that it's a reasonably good idea to head out to that show. Like, it's not that risky. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball on this. You're not going to necessarily know for sure that everything's going to be okay. It could happen that it still is an off year or it doesn't work out, but at least if you've done the research in advance, you can feel pretty good about that you did everything you could, and it's just going to be what it's going to be. But you don't want to just be sort of jumping all over the place, going to every out of town show just because it looks like a fun road trip. At least I wouldn't recommend that. And then accommodations, I would recommend booking a good accommodation. You don't want a bad accommodation, but a good accommodation that's relatively close to the venue is really nice. On the trip that we just took, we were literally, I think it was a 3-minute drive, maybe a 2-minute drive from the hotel. I had looked at the map initially and thought, oh, we could walk that, but it turned out to be like kind of cold, super windy, and there was some construction in the area where you would normally walk. That didn't quite work out how I planned, but it was a really nice, very short commute just around the corner. And so that was something that was taking on some of the anxiety out of the mornings because you didn't have to worry about, well, I've got to drive half an hour to get to the show now, and I may not get parking, etc. Number two is packing essentials. So that can be a challenging area, especially, we all, no matter how big your vehicle is, how many trailers you got behind it, whatever the case is, you just only have so much space. And most of us have a van or a pickup truck, that kind of thing. I've seen a lot of hatchbacks out there. So when you're packing, you want to make sure that you're using your space safely and effectively. And I found that if you're planning to do maybe some work on the road, like maybe you're taking a trip and you're staying over a couple nights before you get there, or you're arriving a day early, or simply you didn't quite get everything done that you wanted to get done beforehand, you can stop early at the show from setup and that kind of thing and head back to the hotel room and start putting together a few items once you've basically got your booth ready to go. And in order to do that, you want to pack your crafting supplies with you. And you probably want a separate set of little tools, more compact, more travel ready. And you definitely want some travel cases or travel boxes or whatever it is you're making. Say you're a beader, you don't want to have it so that the latch comes open and you've got beads all over your luggage or all over the floor or all over your hotel room or whatever the case is. We certainly have at least one suitcase that has been filled with beads and jump rings at certain points due to a defective bead carrier, and it still has jump rings coming out of it, and that was like 15 years ago. Crafters and artists often do is do something at the hotel room, so pre-plan that, and you don't want to take up too much space in that. You mainly want to go make sure you're getting rest, make sure you're refreshed for each day, and you're not stressing yourself out about too many things. On the other hand, I know lots of times there's some last minute things that you really wanted for the show and you can do them. Just plan that ahead. Booth setup. So I found that it's easy to go, well, when I get there, I'm going to decide whether I'm going to do this one or that one. Decide at home. If you can at all, decide at home on each of those things and only take the one where you go, you know what? I think this is my favorite one. I think this is going to show my product the best. I think for this market, this is the most appropriate display stand, tablecloth, whatever, and just go with that. Trust yourself on it. Don't worry about it. Don't take the extra things because, for example, the last show we just did, you had to go up. There was only one elevator, and it was a small cargo elevator. So one artist could go up at a time with one cart and so on. And so it was a big process to move in. And I've been to ones that are even much worse than that. And you don't want to be lugging that up there and having to make 10 trips to your vehicle because you brought just so many things and you've got it spread all over the place and you're figuring out what you're going to do with your space. Have an idea before you go what you really think you need, and try not to bring anything, if anything, maybe only a little extra just as a backup, but nothing major. I wouldn't recommend it because it'll just be in your way and it'll slow you down both moving in and out. And it'll take up valuable cargo space. Inventory, of course, you want to pick inventory that you think is going to be appropriate for the show and bring as much as you can. But at the same time, you don't want to have hundreds and hundreds of items and no way to display them, or it's just not a realistic amount. You want to bring, more than you would reasonably need, but not so much that it is an extreme burden to move it in and out. That's not a good idea. I've done it before. I don't recommend it because lots of times, you bring these items that are kind of outside of what you normally make, and then they're hard to work into the display anyways, or they require their own display, and then you have a whole nother display that you have to bring. Travel friendly displays. Anything that pulls apart, breaks down, collapses, folds is great, especially for this. I saw some little tabletop stands recently when I was at one of the trade show supply stores here in Edmonton, and it was great. It was made out of wood. It all just pulled apart beautifully. It would be a great stand for some of the things that we make, for jewelry, holding jewelry stands. There was a little wooden shelving unit, holding soap, all those kind of things. That's a great item. And I would totally think that would be a good thing to travel with because it got so small. And then you can bring more inventory, which is the more important thing, of course. And we have jewelry stands where they have a kickstand on the back and they fold closed. Of course, there's the cardboard ones. There's also plastic ones that are a bit nicer and they don't get destroyed so quickly. And, just keep an eye out for that because those types of things are good for any show. And then you can, if you plan to travel, get the ones that travel really well, and then just use those at your hometown shows too, so you don't have to worry about packing in and out as much items. Travel size toiletries. Well, you definitely, that's just a general tip, but that's a good idea for traveling light, but also traveling smart. So it's just like taking a trip anywhere as a vacation or whatever the case is. You want to plan that you may, you don't need to bring the full size toothpaste or whatever it is. Maybe you don't need to bring a whole massive disinfectant wipe thing or a paper towel roll that's jumbo. You could bring the smaller versions and it would be just good enough for the trip. Tools for your vehicle, in this case, I would totally recommend having even a torque wrench and booster cables, tire gauge, all those things that you think maybe I need it. Probably won't need it, but what if I do? If you're on the side of the highway and you needed it, it's really worth it. So anywhere you can, if your vehicle has little storage pockets or under the seat or whatever the case is, and you can put some of these things safely, I would recommend doing that and adding them to a list because they're easy to forget because you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about doing the craft show. And so you're running around looking for jewelry stands and soap boxes and whatever else that you're looking for, not thinking about torque wrenches and pliers and so forth that you may actually realistically need on this trip. Transportation tips is our next one. So basically, when you're planning out your trip, you might be going, I know lots of vendors that fly across the country and do, Canada's pretty big. So they fly across the country or to the United States to do a show and they ship their items, or they have items such as prints and that kind of thing that they could bring in a suitcase with them. And so you want to decide what is the best mode of transport for you, what's going to work for what you need, and reasonably economically speaking, is that going to be a really good idea to fly? If you sell really small items, you'd have to sell quite a few to cover the flight perhaps. So maybe it would be better to drive, but maybe you don't have a really good vehicle for that, that kind of thing. And travel insurance, if you are driving, you definitely want to probably have that. And it's a good thing to check with your business insurance provider on how much they cover if you're items, your inventory, your displays, etc., are in your vehicle. If you get in an accident, hopefully not, obviously, or if you get broken into, also hopefully not, but these things can happen, and you want to make sure that you know at least what you're covered for. Carpooling is a good idea if you are maybe heading up to a show and splitting gas and renting a cargo van, or your friend has a van or something like that, and you're splitting the cost of the trip, less time behind the wheel perhaps, that sort of thing, so you can trade off. Public transit and Ubers when you're there. We know a lot of vendors that will get an accommodation opposite of what I just recommended, and then they'll call an Uber and take it into a comic expo or something like that, and they go, oh yeah, it's only a 15-minute drive, it cost me $20, no big deal. Really depends on what you sell and what you're willing to pay for parking or pay for Ubers, that kind of thing. Sometimes that makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. Travel light. So I definitely, again, recommend like avoiding any extra baggage and including your personal luggage. So take an extra change of clothes, of course. Take an extra change of clothes additionally for moving out or moving in as well. I've found that, especially moving in, because I don't want to have the shirt that I'm wearing to the show get something on it during move-in, might snag it during move-in, something like that. And so I want to have like extra clothing that I wear just for move in and move out if I can. And I find that helpful. On the other hand, I don't like to bring a whole bunch of clothing. I know it's different for every person, but bring the minimum that you're comfortable with bringing, because you can really save on space and then you don't have to worry about packing it out of the hotel, etc. So our next one is booth setup and displays. Well, basically, I kind of breached into this earlier, but efficiently planning out your booth layout for the maximum efficiency in terms of what you need to bring with you, what you can leave behind, what collapses the most, and still looks good though. You don't want to have, we used to have some things that we'd repurposed, and I wouldn't say they looked really great in retrospect. So definitely you want to have something that highlights the quality of your product, because I know you all make beautiful items and you want to have that reflected. But at the same time, you don't want to bring in like a massive glass countertop on wheels to display your jewelry in. I've done glass counters before. I've done collapsible glass counters where you have to take everything all apart. I don't know that they were really that helpful. They looked great, but they were super heavy. It took forever to set them up and take them down. You had to be really careful. And I've had one of my favorite one, actually, it got so cold on the one trip that when I picked it up out of the van, it just crumbled. It shattered, turned to just nothing. Fortunately, it was safety glass. It still cut my hands up, went all into my clothing, into my shoes, all over the booth. It was not good. So you want to plan that out very carefully. And then you also want to plan out your branding and those types of things for your booth very carefully. So signs that roll up are really nice. We were talked into a sign recently that was for outdoor shows, but I liked it so much. I've been bringing it to the indoor shows, but it's like a same type of materials, like a garage sale sign type thing. And it looks good. It's hard to pack. I don't recommend those ones other than for maybe outdoor shows, just because they hold up nicely. I would recommend roll-up ones. In other videos, we've talked about getting magnetic hangers, like poster hangers, and that way, if it's kind of springy after you've rolled it up, just put the magnetic hangers on it, and it takes care of the problem right away, and you hang it up, and you're good to go, and you don't have to think about it. I would also recommend, as I have in every video, maybe it's going to be a joke now, but it's not a joke at all, a sign with you making your product on it. Make sure you take that, especially to places that where like nobody knows you. Then you can say, hi, I'm Tanner. My wife and I, in our case, my wife and I make this, and here we are making it in our studio back home in Edmonton, which is 12 hours from here, kind of thing. Number 5, networking and socializing. So we've mentioned this elsewhere in other videos, but for this purpose, you're out of town, you're in a totally new market, you're meeting totally new people. It's a great opportunity to meet and get to know the promoter, get to know other vendors from the area or other vendors that have traveled there that you haven't met before. It's a great opportunity to get to know local, of course, local customers, but also store owners, gallery owners, shop owners, whatever the case is, that might be interested in your work. And number 6 is record keeping. So this will be helpful going forward when you go, okay, last year, what was that? What did everybody like at that particular show kind of thing? And you can look and see, oh, yes, this is the show where um, I don't know, my chakra beaded jewelry did the best. For whatever the case was, it was just the perfect place for that. And the community just loves that. So I know next year I need to bring more of that or more of this certain color or whatever the case is that seemed to be something that they just generally liked in that area. And of course, you want to keep track of your expenses too. So you know how much you actually spent on the trip because it can quickly become a much bigger amount than you thought. And so you want to keep like an active rolling account of your expenses so that if it's a new market and sales are light the first year, but they're still good, you don't want to just totally go, I literally paid everything off and that was it. You want to have still a profit if you can, of course, because that will allow you to get to your next show. So you don't want to have uh, this kind of risky show thing that out of town, like, man, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to go broke. Do not do that. That I don't recommend at all. You definitely want to go ahead and um, keep track of what your spending is, and then get feedback from the customers at the show and see what they like as well. Traveling to craft fairs often involves dining out. So, as I was just kind of talking about your expenses, so meal planning ahead of time, knowing where things are that you like that aren't too expensive. If you have a room with a kitchenette in it of some sort or an Airbnb or whatever the case is, where's the closest grocery store? Can you bring a cooler with you to this location? And, can you cook your own meals, save some money that way? Packing snacks again, you want to be what do you need? And at the same time, what don't you need? And reusable water bottles, so you can avoid buying a bunch of water bottles, and then you also don't have to haul in a whole bunch of a case of water or something like that. And your reusable coffee cups and so forth. Accommodations, I mentioned that a little earlier. I think that basically the only thing I would add at this point would be if you can always do a shared accommodation with another vendor that if you know them fairly well, or someone that you think, yeah, this would probably be okay. It can certainly save you, again, just like carpooling. And I would recommend, if you have to stay an extra night on the way there or on the way back or both, bring your inventory into your room. We just know too many people that have had their car or van or truck broken into, especially after the show. It's like often, don't leave your vehicle unattended to run back into the expo and say, oh, goodbye, my good friend. Say goodbye on the way out to load your vehicle, and then get in your vehicle when your stuff's in there and go, because we know some pretty like we know professional vendors that have been broken into and they were obviously targeted, and you don't want that. That's just so terrible. And so you don't want to leave it unattended at all. You don't want to leave anything that where someone can see through easily, like, oh, there's a laptop, or there's obviously silver jewelry, or whatever the case is. And then you want to bring that up to your hotel room. And then I would say, at the end of each show, and out of town shows are no different, really. It's just feedback and reflection. So what kind of feedback did you get? Did you have people sign up for your newsletter? Were they interested in any, if you had some extra things going on online, or if you had, if the show allowed contests or that sort of thing? And what did everybody generally say? And, maybe write down some of your notes on your last night and think about it on the way home. Like, oh yeah, that part was really good. That part, I should have brought more of this, or I should get a new display for that. Or, I don't think that layout really worked for me. I should rethink that. And so that's basically the tips that we have for traveling to any type of show. And hopefully you found that helpful. If you did, I hope you'll consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the like button so we can reach out to more people just like you and help them on their journey for whatever they're making and what they were called to do. And so Amy and I really appreciate you watching this. We'll be doing these every Wednesday night at 6:30 Mountain Daytime, MDT. And so that'll be every Wednesday. And we hope to see you here again in future live events. Thank you so much.